Hey, welcome back. Tonight's lesson we're going to create an assembly, mechanical assembly. We're actually going to create a motion study with it as well. So the idea of this is going to rotate. This pin is going to come into one of these slots. It's going to rotate around. This part's going to stop until the pin rotates around and picks up the next slot and moves it forward. Just a few simple parts. So we got a base, we've got a wheel that's going to rotate, and then we got a drive wheel and a drive pin. So let's go ahead and get started. Make sure that you got SolidWorks open. We want to create a new part. We also want to be in inches. We're going to start with the base of it, that little wooden looking piece. So select, make sure that you are in inches down here in the bottom right. So select extruded boss base. We want to pick the top plane. I'm going to use a center rectangle. I'm going to pull it out and place it down like this. Then I'm going to dimension this thing. Let's go with 12 inches long. And let's go with about 5 inches wide. And we're ready to exit our sketch here. So let's go exit sketch. I think I want to make this thing about 1 inch thick and accept it. Now I want to place a couple of holes in here for our drive mechanism. So let's select extruded cut, pick this top surface. I'm going to come up and select a midpoint line. I want this thing to be centered up. I'm going to pull it out and place it down, and I want to make that line for construction. And I also want to add a couple of circles on the ends of this. So I'm going to pick a circle here and a circle here, and I want to add a relation. So I want to make that circle that's already highlighted blue and this circle, I want to make those two equal. And then let's dimension these things. So let's call them 0.75. Alright, so now the length of this is going to be about 4.5 or 4 1/4 inches overall length. Alright, so let's go ahead and exit this. And we want to cut through everything. So let's just say through all, just in case we change our thickness later. And now we have a couple holes in here. Let's go ahead and put us a couple chamfers on here, or a chamfer all the way around it. So let's pick a chamfer. Let's make the size maybe 0.3. And we'll pick this edge, this edge, this edge, and this edge, and accept it. And I'm going to use my Control 7 command, and now we've got a part, our first part. So let's go ahead and save it. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call mine the junk folder, and I'm going to call this the base. Alright, that's probably going to be the first part that we use in our assembly because we want to put everything on the base itself. Okay. Alright, so the next part, let's go ahead and start with the wheel that's going to rotate. So let's create a new part. We want to select an extruded boss base. I'm going to start on the top plane. I want to start with a circle. Let's give this about a 6-inch diameter. And we want to go ahead and exit this sketch, and we're just going to cut away at everything else. So let's make this 1/2 inch thick. Alright, so now we've got a couple slots in here. If we look right here, we got these slots. Let's go ahead and cut those in there. Alright, so extruded cut. I want to pick this very top surface. I want to use this slot command. We'll start up here at the top where it's oriented directly above our point of origin. This is a 3-click command, so you got to click where you want it, click about how deep you want it, and then how wide that you're going to want this thing. So let's use a smart dimension. I think I want it to be about 3/16, so let's make it 0.188. And then we need a distance up, and this should fully define it. So I pick our origin and I pick our arc, and let's go ahead and just make that 1.5. So we now have a slot that we're going to cut in here. So we exit our sketch. We want to cut through all and accept it. Now the next thing that we're going to need is this this little arc that we have around here. So let's go ahead and create that. So another extruded cut. We want to pick this top surface. I'm going to use just a center line, pull it out, make sure that it snaps horizontal. And then I'm going to grab another circle out here, pull it out, place it around there somewhere like that. And let's give this a dimension of 3.54 and a dimension here of say 4 1/4. So we're now fully defined. We can now cut this through everything. So we exit this sketch and we want to cut through all. Alright, so now we got this slot here and this slot here, but it's really not a concern that we got. We want to create a circular pattern with this because we want to pattern all these. So I come up here to the very top. What is my axis to pattern around? I'm going to roll it around and pick this face here, so that puts an axis right in the center of it. And now the features or faces that I want, I can pick them over here in the graphics area, but I'm going to expand my part number out, and I'm going to pick the cut, and I'm going to pick the second cut as well. Alright, so that gives us a preview of what this is going to look like, and that's what the top of our part is looking like. So use the Control-7 command to kind of put it in orientation where we're looking at an isometric. Now I want to put the little axle on the bottom of it, and I also want a little step up as well. So let's create another extruded boss base, and I want to roll it around and pick this bottom surface. I'm going to pick a regular circle, place it here, and I want to give it a dimension of, say, let's go 1.5. Alright, and that's good enough. So we want to exit the sketch. We should still be in extruded boss. I'm just going to leave it as a 1/2 inch, so we'll accept that. Now this is where it's going to rest on top of our wooden block. So let's create another extruded boss base for the axle to go through the hole. Pick that bottom surface, place another circle on the center, one click, pull it out and release it, and we know that that hole was 0.75, so let's go 0.75, and we are ready to exit our sketch. And I think our base was 1 inch thick, so we'll go ahead and accept it. Control-7, and we're good with this particular part. So let's go ahead and save this one. Let's call it wheel. Alright, we're ready to move on to our third part. Alright, so let's create a new part. And we want to create an extruded boss base on the top plane. Start with another circle. So what we're going to try to work on here is this piece right here, and then we're going to cut this little half moon out. Alright, so this part, let's go with 3.54 on our diameter, and we're going to exit our sketch. And we're going to make this a thickness of, say, 1/2 inch. Now we want to create a cut out here that's going to rotate around. So let's come up and select extruded cut. We want to pick this top surface up here. I'm going to draw me a couple of lines. So I want center lines. Alright, so now I'm going to come up and grab me a 3-point arc. I want to add some more relations. I want clear this out. I want this line to be equal, and I'm going to clear this out again. I want this point to be coincident with that. This one to be coincident with this, and I know that we got 6 of these things, so I want this to be it would be 75, but I want to give it an extra degree of clearance, so let's give it 76 degrees. And now let's try something else. Let's go add a relation. Let's see if we can make this point, this line, and this point symmetric. Okay? And now, the center of this, let's just make this 1.383. Alright, so now let's exit our sketch. We want to cut this through all. So now we have this little moon shape on here. Okay. Now, Control 7. I want to create an extruded boss base on the bottom of this thing. So let's come up here and we want to add a circle. Last one that we started with was 6 inches, so let's keep this one at 6. So this is fully defined, so let's go ahead and exit this sketch. We still have a 1/2 inch. We want to make sure that merge results is checked. So we now have this. Now we need to place a hole out here. So this is where our drive pin is going to go. So let's select extrude cut. We're going to pick this surface or this face. I'm going to put a hole here or a circle there. I want to add a relation. I'll clear this out. I want to make sure that my center point and my origin are horizontal. And then let's give this maybe 0.375. So that's the diameter of it. And now we need a position from the center out. So 4 1/4. Let's go 2.22. And accept it. So now that's completely or fully defined. To verify it down here in the bottom right, exit our sketch. And we want to cut through all. And now we also need to do the same thing on the bottom here. This time I want this to rest on the surface itself. So let's just put a little drive pin or a drive axle down on the very bottom. So pick the bottom, come up and grab a circle, put it on the origin, pull it out, place it down, let's dimension it. 0.75. And we exit our sketch. We know that the distance of the thickness of our base is 1, so let's give it a 1 inch dimension. Accept it, Control 7, and I believe that we're done with this particular part. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's call it drive wheel. Alright, so now we got one more part to make. Let's create a new part. And it's just that little bitty pin, so we want to create an extruded boss base on the top plane. I'm going to start with a circle here. I think the hole that we put in our last part was 0.375. So let's exit our sketch now that we're defined, and we want to make that 1 inch tall. And now we're going to try something a little bit different than what you've done before. So we got this little pin, little dowel pin. So we want to create an extruded boss base up on this very top face. Now I'm just going to say offset entities. I pick that face. Let's make it 0.125 larger. And we accept it. So it created a sketch for us, and now it's always going to be 1/8 of an inch larger than whatever the size the pin is. So let's exit our sketch. Let's verify that it's going uphill. Let's not make it an inch tall. Let's make it like 0.25 tall. Alright, so go ahead and accept it. Control 7, put it in an isometric view, and let's save it as well. And we're going to call this the drive pin. Alright, so now we've got all 4 of our parts made. So what we want to do is we want to create an assembly of this part. So come up and select New. Make sure that you're not selecting part. Make sure that you go ahead and select Assembly, then OK. Now notice it's got all of our parts over here. The one that we want to start with is the base because it is the most logical, so I select it. Now if I move my mouse out over here and place it down, it becomes a little bit problematic, but really not that big of a deal. What I want to do is I want to use this green check, and then it places it where I actually modeled it. So now we have one part, and that part is fixed, so we're ready to move on to the next thing. So I want to move up here to where it says Insert Components, drop the chevron down, Insert a Component. Let's just go with the wheel, and I'm just going to drag it out and place it over here somewhere where I can get to it. I can rotate this thing around where we can see what's going on. Now I want to put it in this hole, so this is where the mating command comes in. So we select a mate. I want to go ahead and force it. I want to select concentric mate. So we want these two the shaft and this hole to have the same center. So I'll pick that shaft, and then I roll around and I'll pick the face of this cut that we have, and it's going to move it over to where the two axes are centered up. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to want a coincident mate. So we're basically going to say that these two faces are going to meet. So I'm going to rotate this thing around where I can just take a look through and I can see the bottom of this particular part, but I'm going to roll it around a little bit more. So I want to pick that bottom face and the very bottom of our base. So when I rotate this thing around and I go ahead and accept it. Now notice I still have a minus sign over here, so my part is not fully fixed. But what I can do is I can rotate this thing around, okay? And that's what I am going to want to do in our assembly. So I'm just going to leave this thing pretty loose for right now. Alright, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to insert another component. So I'll come up here at the top, insert components. I want the drive wheel this time. I'm going to do very similar things. So I'm just going to place it out here in the graphics area. So it's not where we modeled it, but we want to do the same thing. Now, I don't necessarily have to select concentric because the software usually will grab something for you, and it's pretty good about making the right decisions on our mates. So I want to pick this shaft, the outside face of that shaft, and then I want to pick the inside face of the cylinder that we cut earlier. So that's going to make those two line up as well. Now, I want to do the same thing again. So I accepted that mate, I pick this bottom face, and I pick the bottom face of our base. So now I'm going to rotate this thing around. This thing rotates this way, this rotates this way. You can see that hole in there. And I want to go ahead and accept it because I want to insert another component. So the component that I want to put in is the little drive pin. So let's go ahead and insert components. Let's get the drive pin. I'm just going to place it out here somewhere. I'm going to select mate. I want to pick this cylinder again, and I want to pick this cylinder. Notice it moved it over. Don't panic because it kind of crammed it way down in there. I can come grab this thing and just drag it up. And now the next mate, it shows me that I have a concentric mate down here, so I'm happy with that. I want to pick this bottom face, and then I want to pick this top face here to make it coincident. So what that's telling me is that this thing is really just fixed here. So it's fixed in virtual space. It really wouldn't be fixed in reality, okay? Alright, so I'm going to Control 7. Now it'd be a good time to save our assembly, okay? So we want to save it, and I'm just going to call it assembly. You need to call it whatever that you need to call your parts. Alright, so now that we've got it saved, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to rotate it around, and I'm going to rotate it to where things look like they're kind of lining up like it would function in real life. Alright, so I'm going to pick this, and my flyout comes up and I want to go normal too, so I can zoom in and kind of take a look at this thing. Alright, so I'm looking at this. We got a pin here. This looks pretty close. So I can move things around and just get it kind of in this orientation. I'm going to use my Control 7 command. I want to put it in orientation. So let's go ahead and save it. It's going to ask me to rebuild it, and I'm going to say, yeah, I do want to rebuild it. So now we put this in orientation. What we want to do is we want to create a motion study to where we can make this thing look like it would work in real life. So come to your motion study, select it. Now, down here along the bottom, this is where all of our tools are going to lie for the moment. So over here where it says animation, I want it to be basic motion. Alright? So that's going to give us a little more leeway with what we've got going on. And so now what I can do is I can come over here to our properties tab. In the animation, I think I want about 25 frames per second. Also in the basic motion, let's keep it consistent with 25 frames per second. The geometry accuracy, I want to go ahead and force this to be pretty high. And I think those settings are what I want. I don't really want to check any of these, so let's go ahead and accept that. Now, what we want to do is we want to add a motor because we don't want to sit here and drive this thing by ourselves. So right here at the very bottom, I want to select motor. The component that I want to move is this component. Now my arrow's pointing clockwise. I really want to go counterclockwise. So what I want to do is I want to come over here. I want to reverse the direction. And I also want to change my RPMs. I think 15. 100 is just entirely too fast. So I go ahead and I change to our going counterclockwise, and I have 15 RPM. So I want to go ahead and accept that. Now, if we just left this alone, this is just going to spin, and this pin is going to drive all the way through our part right here. That's not what we want. We want to make a contact or a cam type situation. So The groups that we're going to want is, I want our drive pin, I want our part, and now I want to lock this one to where this thing says when it rotates around, it's going to stop this thing from moving when this one doesn't contact. So I should have 3 pairs. Let's go ahead and accept that. And now I want to drag my this little key point, or my time bar. I want to drag it out. Let's go to about 15 seconds. And now I want to calculate this from the beginning. Now when you calculate it, don't be too concerned about if it jumps around or anything else. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Your graphics card may have a hard time keeping up while the calculations are going on. So let's select calculate. And let's hope that it starts moving. And it is moving. So it picked it up later, but don't be too concerned about that. Alright. So it's getting to the point of coming through. So let's go ahead and hit our play from start and watch what happens. Alright, it looks fairly smooth. If you really wanted to save this out as a video or something, you can come in here and save the animation, but that's for a later date, so that just shows you how that animation wizard actually works. So alright, make sure that you save it in the proper format, make sure that you save all of your part files, and make sure that you save this thing in a pack and go format. That way all of your parts are in one particular zip file, and then you can submit those in your learning management system. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next one.